we need to talk about the Bx15. Before we start talking about the Bx15, please check out our Discord server. It will be put down in the description below. Our community is growing, so please join us. Okay, now back to the Bx15. So the Bx15 as of right now currently runs between 125th Street and 12th Avenue in West Harlem, Manhattan, down 125th Street, up and then up 3rd Avenue, up to Fordham Plaza in the Bronx. Its main corridors are 125th Street and 3rd Avenue. This will change with the Bx15 getting split at 3rd Avenue, with the southern half being the M125, which you can tell by the route number, which will cover 125th Street. Then the Bx15 will cover between 149th Street and Fordham Plaza. This is actually the important portion that we need to talk about today. The 3rd Avenue corridor is not really the most reliable, as it is always plagued with traffic and very slow speeds and double parked vehicles, just like many routes in our transit system here in New York City. The Bx15, because of this, suffers from a lot of reliability issues like bus bunching and long gaps between those bunches. This route also has a limited portion, which came into existence in 2013, but we will get to that backstory right now. It will be towards the end of the backstory, so you're going to have to stay tuned for it. Until the 1970s, there used to be a elevated train line that ran between 149th Street and 3rd Avenue up to Gun Hill Road in the Bronx. This route, of course, being the 3rd Avenue elevated. However, this line did not only run in the Bronx when it was first built. As you see, the 3rd Avenue elevated line was originally built in Manhattan between 1875 and 1878. The line ran from City Hall up the Bowery and 3rd Avenue to the Harlem River. Service was then brought into the Bronx in 1891 up to 133rd Street in the South Bronx. And then later, construction under the dual contracts brought the main line of the elevated between Manhattan and the Bronx, eventually up to Gun Hill Road, where the White Plains Road line is today. In 1902, this line was brought under control of the Interborough Rapid Transit Company, also known as the IRT, so this line became known as the IRT 3rd Avenue Elevated. Service to South Ferry ceased in 1950 and service to City Hall 3 years later. The main line of the 3rd Avenue L in Manhattan had service from Chatham Square North until 1955. For the next 18 years, this route ran in the Bronx only from 149th Street up to Gun Hill Road. This is the corridor which we'll be talking about today. For about 7 decades, the Bronx's 3rd Avenue corridor had a high-quality transit route that connected this side of the borough that barely had any transit service because the Concourse line was far away and the White Plains Road line was a bit of a distance. To access either from the main 3rd Avenue corridor, you would either have to take a bus in the case of the Concourse line or take the 3rd Avenue L. But then in 1973, this line was demolished, and in its place was the Bx15 limited bus. So this was a bus that replicated the 3rd Avenue L's route between Gun Hill Road and 149th Street. And fun fact, the only remnant of the 3rd Avenue L to this day is the Gun Hill Road mezzanine. Like when you go up the escalators from the main entrance, yeah, that's the old mezzanine for the 3rd Avenue L lower level. So, fun fact for you guys. And it was converted, I think it was converted into a mezzanine in 1999, but I'm not quite sure. Somebody please fact check that for me. But basically the Bx15 was the replacement for the 3rd Avenue elevated. And because of this replacement status, it offered free transfers at both Gun Hill Road and 149th Street to the number 2 and number 5 lines. Throughout the years, this route has seen multiple service cuts, including a lot of trips ending at Fordham Plaza, with less trips going to Gun Hill Road. As we all know, the 3rd Avenue L had no tracks, so it could terminate at Fordham Road. It had to terminate at Gun Hill Road or 149th Street. So if you're trying to be a subway replacement for the full route, you should have all the buses go to Gun Hill Road. And I heard somewhere, again, fact check me on this, the bus had 1 to 2 minute headways on rush hour, trying to replicate the load of the 3rd Avenue Elevated. And again, this did not last for long. As we all know, a lot of buses mainly ended at Fordham Plaza with service to Gun Hill Road ending earlier than south of Fordham Plaza. And somebody will point out, F-Train, the Bx41 serves that corridor. Well, you're right. But again, you're trying to replace the defunct subway line that used to run. You might as well run all the buses. Full route. Am I right? Yes? No? Maybe so? But this wasn't the last service cut, because in 2010, where a lot of service cuts were done in the bus and the subway system, the Bx15 lost its weekend service. So basically at this point it was just another bus. But then again, it was just another bus once the Metro card came about, because then the Metro card allowed free transfers between the bus and the subway back in the 90s. But I digress. So then 3 years later, the Bx55 was no more, because the Bx41 SBS was a great excuse to get rid of the Bx55 altogether, when really the Bx55 should have been the SBS this whole time, because the 3rd Avenue corridor had more riders than the Webster Avenue corridor. So it would have been proven more profitable to keep the Bx55 the whole route as an SBS. But then you might ask, what did the Bx55 get replaced with on 3rd Avenue? And it basically just got replaced with a limited variant of the Bx15 that ran to Harlem, with the local variant running between 149th Street and Fordham Plaza, and service on the Bx15 local on weekends served the whole route, and late nights too. But essentially the Bx15 Limited was the replacement for the Bx55, with the Bx41 SBS sort of acting as the replacement between Fordham and Gun Hill Road. So as of right now, the only true descendant of the 3rd Avenue L, the service south of 149th Street to Harlem, has always been the Bx15, so that doesn't really count. So that is how we went from a high-quality transit line that took people to Manhattan quickly, up to a slow bus that is plagued with reliability issues, and it doesn't seem to be getting any better. So you might be asking, what can be done about this? Well, the answer is kind of already being planned with the Interborough Express. You see, the Interborough Express is going to be running on a heavy rail line between Woodside and Bay Ridge using existing tracks that just got to be upgraded. Sadly, that line is not going to the Bronx, but I just wanted to use it for an example, and my reaction to the plan is in episode 1, and I will link that in the upper right-hand corner, so I would totally recommend checking it out. But anyways, the point is that you can use a heavy rail line to create a new transit line. But in the case of the Bronx with the 3rd Avenue corridor, there's a nearby corridor near Park Avenue that has 2 stations that are actually used, and it's near where the defunct corridor was. It's only a few blocks away, as a matter of fact. I am talking about the Metro North Harlem line. Those 2 stops are Melrose and Tremont, but then you also have other service stops at Fordham, Botanical Garden, and Williamsbridge. Those stations on the 3rd Avenue L that were nearby were Fordham Road, 204th Street, 210th Street, and Gun Hill Road and White Plains Road, respectively, with the last 2 being near the Williamsbridge Metro North station. The solution can be having a city fare zone that is equivalent to the subway between Williamsbridge and Harlem 125th Street all the way to Grand Central. You could probably even justify adding Woodlawn as well, and Wakefield. And also adding more stations, because there is quite a gap between 125th Street and Melrose, and have more service in this Bronx portion. At that point, you could justify adding it to the subway map. It would eventually be similar to the London Overground service. Same goes for the Interborough Express whenever that's done. And it could provide a high quality transit service that has been lost for decades now. And with the current governor wanting to repurpose a rail line, you could also repurpose an existing line to help serve communities that were far left behind with the demolition of the 3rd Avenue Elevated. And one can argue that this project is actually easier because the line is active and already in use, and you can put a program in place that has the fare equivalent to the subway within the Bronx, with the existing stations in the Bronx that could be used in this program. And the additional stations could always come later. So hopefully one day they could just do it. Literally just do it. But we all know that's easier said than done. So that was pretty much all I wanted to go through today. And stay tuned for the next video where we go to Staten Island.